No convoy survives Ironfang Gorge at night. Tonight, Shadow Recon would learn why for 16 hours. Commander Ethan Rourke and his team clung to the ridgeline, pinned by dust, smoke, and echoes that came from nowhere below them. Convoy Echo 7 crawled through the canyon armored carriers, fuel trucks, and medical transports carrying supplies for 40,000 civilians waiting in a town that hadn't seen clean water or electricity in weeks. If they didn't make it through, thousands would wither in the dark. But Ironfang Gorge was already owned. The Black Talon's mercenaries trained in NATO playbooks had buried themselves into the rock. Mortars were zeroed. Heavy machine guns sighted kill zones. Mobile jammers swamped every radio call. Even drones sent hours earlier had dropped lifeless from the sky. This wasn't a battle. It was a script written by professionals, designed to crush anyone foolish enough to enter. Rourke pressed his scope to his eye, searching for a silhouette, a flash. Anything, nothing, just heat shimmer and shifting haze. He pulled back, jaw tight, same as before. They're ghosts in the rock. Navarro cursed under his breath. Keegan, the oldest, leaned against a boulder, a fresh bandage soaking red through his sleeve from a wound earned in Kandahar years ago. Ramirez worked the radio with white knuckles, whispering. No signal. They're jamming everything. Every man on the ridge knew what that meant. Convoy Echo 7 would reach the kill zone in under 10 minutes, and they had no eyes. The first incoming round didn't whistle, it screamed. The shell detonated 100 meters downslope, a geyser of fire and stone blasting skyward. The shockwave slammed into their bones, rattling teeth, knocking Navarro flat. Another round landed closer, then another bracketing their position with surgical precision. Whoever was calling fire wasn't guessing. They knew the range. They knew the angles. Keegan spat grit from his mouth. We're zeroed. They'll bury us here. Shards of rock rained down, stinging faces and arms. Bishop pulled a wounded operator behind cover, hands working fast to bandage while the ridge shook around them. Rourke roared over the chaos. Hold this pass until Echo 7 breaks through. We do not fail here, but in the pit of his gut. He knew the truth. The Black Talons had turned Ironfang Gorge into a coffin, and Shadow Recon was already inside it. Another shell shrieked closer, exploding so near it lifted one man half off his feet and slammed him back into cover. Dust and smoke rolled over the ridge like a wave, choking lungs and blinding eyes. And then over the roar of fire came a sound no one expected. The grind of an engine, the rumble of wheels clawing uphill. A transport truck climbed toward their position, headlights dimmed, armor scorched from the journey. From its back stepped a woman carrying a clipboard and a rucksack far too heavy for paperwork. She moved through the wind with steady steps, eyes already on the cliffs above. Her name was Aria Longshot Kane. And before the SEALs even understood why she was there, the battlefield had already begun to change. The barrage showed no mercy. Mortars walked up the slope in perfect cadence, each blast shredding stone into razors that sliced the air. Convoy Echo 7's voices bled through static lead vehicles burning, wounded screaming, civilians trapped in the back of a truck with no cover. Then only the crackle of fire and the pounding rhythm of enemy guns echoing through Ironfang Gorge. Commander Ethan Rourke slammed his fist against the granite, splitting his knuckles. We've got nothing, he growled. The words landed heavier than any shell. His men had heard anger before, but never helplessness. Navarro dragged Keegan behind cover, blood soaking his bandages. Ramirez twisted the radio dial furiously, only to shake his head. Jamming's total. We're deaf and blind. Bishop tried to keep his voice steady while patching a fresh wound. but the look in his eyes said it all. Shadow Recon had been caged. And then another voice cut through the chaos. Calm, level, unshaken. What's your longest confirmed shot from this ridge? The question hung absurdly in the smoke-filled air. Rourke twisted toward the sound. Aria Kane crouched near the cliff's edge, clipboard tossed aside, hair whipping in the canyon wind. What Rourke barked, dust streaking his face, her eyes never moved from the far ridge. Longest confirmed shot, distance, conditions. Navarro gave a bitter laugh, nerves crackling. Ma'am, there is no shot. We've burned through every optic. Nothing but haze and stone. Keegan spat grit. You can't thread a 50 through a canyon on fire. Not here. Rourke shook his head, jaw locked. That's the problem. No line of sight. No. For a moment. She didn't answer. Then Aria nodded once, as if she'd solved a private equation only she could see. She slid her rucksack forward. Canvas groaned under its weight. I'll make one, she said quietly. The words stopped them colder than the mortar barrage. She pulled open the pack with slow, deliberate hands. Not maps, not supply forms. Instead, an oil-wrapped bundle. She laid it on the stone like an artifact, unwrapping layer by layer until black steel caught the half-light. Navarro's eyes widened. No way. The rifle was massive, unmistakable. A Barrett M82A3 long, heavy, built for distances most soldiers never dared dream. Not standard issue. Not something an observer carried. Rourke's throat tightened. Where the hell did you get that Aria ignored him? Her hands moved with a precision too fluid to be new. She unfolded a bipod, slid a sandbag rest into place, drew out a chalk pouch, and let dust scatter in the wind. A battered anemometer followed. Its dial scratched from years of use. She checked it once, set it beside her like a compass, then adjusted the Barrett's scope by fractions. The men exchanged glances. This wasn't improvisation. It was ritual, Navarro muttered. She's done this before. Another shell slammed nearby, rattling teeth, spraying shards across helmets. Men ducked, swore, pressed tighter to cover. Aria didn't move. Flat against the ridge, she leveled the Barrett toward the haze. The canyon still burned. Convoy Echo 7 was still dying. The enemy still ruled the high ground. But for the first time that night, someone on the ridge wasn't blind. Aria Kane set her cheek to the stock. Her breathing slowed. Her world narrowed to a single thread of sight only she could see. The Barrett settled into the stone like it belonged there. Aria Kane lay prone, elbows locked, cheek welded to the stock. Her eyes cut through the smoke, not as a soldier searching for shapes, but as an engineer reading an equation already written in the canyon's wind. Commander Ethan Rourke crouched beside her. Jaw clenched. This ridge has no shot. We've all tried. You're wasting time. Aria's voice was steady. I'm not trying your angles. I'm making my own. She dipped 2 fingers into her chalk pouch, scattering dust into the air. The grains twisted, curled, vanished into invisible currents. She noted the rhythm. 12 seconds, every gust carried smoke in the same looping pattern. She rolled the dial on her scope a fraction, then another, aligning steel to the unseen math. Crosswinds at 900, drops brutal, but it repeats. She murmured. The men exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't the language of an observer. This was sniper school advanced, intimate, like a second tongue. Another mortar screamed overhead and detonated closer still. Shrapnel raked helmets. Raked. Navarro ducked low, cursing. This is suicide. But Aria didn't move. She slowed her breathing, her world narrowing until only the reticle existed. Then she squeezed the trigger. The Barrett roared, Dust leapt in a halo around her. The shot cracked through the gorge, echoing like thunder trapped between walls. Half a second later, stone exploded a meter left of a mortar tube. Not a kill. But the reaction was immediate. One of the Black Talons panicked, diving from cover to drag the weapon back. His outline flickered against the smoke just long enough for Rourke's carbine to bark. The man dropped. For the first time in 16 hours, Shadow Recon had a target. Aria cycled the action, chambering the next round with mechanical grace. She adjusted elevation, her lips moving with numbers no one else understood. The second shot tore through haze and found flesh. A mortar loader collapsed sideways, the tube toppling with him. Silence rippled across the ridge. Keegan whispered, voice raw. "She's breaking them." Rourke didn't answer. He couldn't. Aria fired again. And again. Each time the Barrett's thunder ripped through smoke. Another ghost was dragged screaming into reality. Snipers who had ruled the gorge now sprawled lifeless in dust. The invisible enemy was bleeding, scrambling, for the first time. Convoy Echo 7's radios carried something besides despair. A frantic voice, "Overwatch enemy fires breaking. We can move." Rourke felt the shift like a physical weight lifting. Hope, fragile but real, was back on the ridge. Still, he couldn't stop staring at the woman beside him. Calm, deliberate, exact, reading wind like scripture, speaking in thunder. Aria Kane wasn't guessing. She was seeing what no one else could. And as she settled in for her next shot, Rourke realized the canyon itself had begun to hold its breath. The ridge shook with every recoil, but Aria Kane stayed steady. Her body fused to the Barrett like it was an extension of her will. Each shot carried across Ironfang Gorge with the sound of thunder striking steel. Each echo answered by a sudden silence from the enemy's side. Navarro peered over cover, eyes wide. She's dismantling them, one by one. The Black Talon's positions crumbled, mortar crews collapsed mid-load, machine gunners slumped over their barrels. Snipers who had ruled the canyon for hours now sprawled in the dirt. In less than 8 minutes, Aria had silenced 2 mortar tubes, a machine gun nest, and 4 hidden rifle hides. Commander Ethan Rourke adjusted his headset. Voice taut. "Convoy Echo 7 Overwatch is active. Push forward now on the canyon floor." Echo 7 stirred. Engines coughed to life. Tires crunched over gravel, and armored doors slammed shut as the convoy began to roll again. Civilians inside the medical trucks clutched each other, eyes wide, as the thunder of the Barrett became their shield. Bishop dragged a wounded operator deeper into cover, whispering with renewed steadiness. Navarro shifted to a higher perch, barking target calls with a grin that hadn't been seen since the ambush began. For the first time in 16 hours, Shadow Recon felt like they weren't just holding on, they were winning. Aria didn't look up. Her cheek stayed pressed to the stock, her hands calm as she adjusted turrets by fractions. She spoke softly, more to herself than to anyone else. Wind cross-shifts at 950. Smoke breaks on the quarter cycle. Rourke crouched beside her, awe bleeding into his tone. "Not artillery," he muttered. "Just one woman with a scope." Navarro let out a sharp laugh, half relief, half disbelief. "Feels like God's own artillery to me." Another burst of tracer fire cut through the canyon from the western slope, raking dirt into geysers around the convoy. Aria exhaled once, shifted half an inch, and loosed another 50 caliber round. The nest went silent instantly, its gunners tumbling like puppets with their strings cut. Rourke blinked. She hadn't even hesitated. No pause, no uncertainty, just the same calm execution, over and over. By now, Echo 7 was moving with momentum, armored carriers pushing the lead, supply trucks roaring behind, over the comms. Relief surged in voices that had been nothing but static an hour ago. Overwatch. We're clear of the pass, keep covering, we're moving still. Aria didn't relax. She fired. Adjusted. Fired again. Not one round wasted. Each bullet shaped the canyon itself, forcing the black talons into desperate retreats. The battlefield wasn't just shifting, it was being carved, molded into safe passage. But as the smoke cleared and Echo 7 pressed deeper into the gorge, Rourke noticed something unsettling. The gunfire from the talons hadn't ended completely. It had changed. Sporadic bursts, short and probing, like a predator waiting for its next strike. He leaned closer to Aria. They're pulling back. She shook her head, eyes locked through the scope, not pulling back, regrouping. Rourke frowned. For what? Her voice stayed calm, but her words were ice, for whatever they saved for last. And before Rourke could press further, a new sound rolled across Ironfang Gorge, deeper than mortars, heavier than machine guns, the kind of sound that made veterans' stomachs twist. The roar faded, and with it, the canyon fell silent. Convoy Echo 7 pushed free of the gorge, engines rumbling steady now, no longer frantic. Radios crackled with relief reports of